Hello, if you're watching, thank you for joining. This is the Ink and Panels session on PIY, Publish It Yourself. Today, we're going to be talking about self publishing. My name is Bria Struthers, and I'm going to be moderating the conversation today. But before we start and get into the questions, I'm going to pass it over to each of the creators to briefly introduce themselves and their work. So maybe we can get started with David.
Hi, I'm David Crownson. I'm the writer-creator of Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer and Killer Bee, and the founder of Kingwood Comics.
I'll pass it to Greg.
Greg Burnham. I'm a writer, publisher, I suppose, and I can now add award-nominated editor. I do Tuskegee Years with Marcus Williams, The Search for Sadaka, Little Rock Files, a lot of different books.
And last but not least, TJ.
Hey guys, what's up? This is TJ Sterling. I'm the CEO and creative director over at Ray Media. We publish a variety of comics. I started out as a writer, artist, illustrator that had my first book with this company, and then I started to just do a bunch of writing and work with other artists, and honored to be a part of this great panel and be over at Off Black with you guys for this hour. So let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here today, especially for me as someone who's familiar with all of your work and has learned about it over the past few years. I'm really grateful to be able to speak with you all. And so today, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about self-publishing for those who don't know or aren't familiar. By that, we mean publishing your work yourself on your own, not through like a publisher like the Big Two or some other traditional publisher. So to get more into that, I first wanted to ask you all, each of you publishing your work or through your own created indie publisher, what made you decide to self-publish your work compared to going to a publisher with it? And why do you feel like the stories you've created are better suited for indie publishing?
I'll take that first. Basically, it just came down to a point with Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer where there were interest and there was an offer, but then there was a lot of like watering down the story. And I remember it was me, and I won't say who the publisher was, but they had a white editor, who told me that the comic book was too much fun and had too much action in it, and that I had to tone it down, and I should have more scenes of Harriet being whipped in it. And I was like, no. But and then they were offering me like a lot of money. Like it was like a lengthy advance. They were going to pay all my page rates. I think I would own 90% of the character. And I was just like, no, I don't want to do that. And I think I was just sitting down and just talking with different people about like what should I do? It's like, why don't you just self-publish it? Like you've already like done a Kickstarter already. And at first it just seemed kind of overwhelming because when you're self-publishing, it's like you're in charge of not just the creative process now, you're in charge of when things get released now, and you're in charge of what's going to be the cover and just the overall distribution of your work. So it seemed very overwhelming in the beginning, but I'm glad I did it. And I got to have creative control of my stuff. So I didn't want to see more Black people getting whipped there. That's why.
I appreciate you keeping creative control. Yes.
Guess I'll jump in. I started my career as a college student working at Marvel in the bullpen, and I got a kind of a firsthand idea of just the amount of work that it goes into making a comic book, from the production side to lettering to inking to, uploading stuff digitally to their, their digital platform to just how folks got paid, you know what I'm saying? And honestly, I think my whole goal growing up was to draw for Marvel and DC. That was like the one thing I wanted to do from the time I was a little kid. Buying comics in the 80s and the 90s was like, this is what I want to do. I want to have this job. But you know, as you get older, you start to think about things like time. And I think for me, time became the currency for almost everything. I think any adult, they start to see, okay, how much time is it going to take? And, I started thinking about, okay, two people that I look at and admire very much in the business of comics, like Mark Bagley and Robert Kirkman. And, you know, two very different guys, two successful guys, but Mark Bagley has spent most of his career drawing Spider-Man. That's an honor. It's an amazing opportunity, but he's spent decades drawing that book and never going to own it. Never owned a piece of Spider-Man ever. Meanwhile, you got Robert Kirkman, who writes a bunch of his own stuff, owns everything, and has a lot more creative control. And there's just, he has more of an opportunity to tell the narratives that are personal to him. And I think that trajectory, that path was much more attractive to me. Because again, I already saw how much work it took to put into making comics and, how literally could absorb your entire life. And because even when you're doing something else, you're still working on your comics. You're still working on your craft. It's an everyday 24-hour thing. And I was like, listen, I could spend all this time drawing someone else's characters and never own them, but I'd much rather do that, put that energy into drawing and creating my characters and really making something that was, generational wealth for my family and just bringing more people in to where I could really enjoy and see this child that I'm bringing into the world grow and to flourish into something else.
I guess, like, for me, I have to go all the way back to like in the 80s when I was in love with comics, and I just, like, there was like a ceiling, and there wasn't anybody around me to let me know that this was something I could even do. So I always mention, like, in I can't remember the year, I'm not gonna mess up the year, but I remember Arsenio Hall talking about Brother Man on his show. Dawood and Guy Sims, like, they, created this book in Philly in the early 90s, and they were selling it. And I'm like, oh, wait, Black people can make comics without permission? And then I remember my grandmother in Kansas City, one day, I was there for the summer, she comes home with this book called Omega Man. And she's like, this young man came into my store. He's a Black man. He made this book. Read it. And I'm like, I was reading it, but the whole time I'm like, we can just do this without, we can just do this. And so, Milestone would come out shortly after that. And even though they were under DC, like, we always felt like it was a Black company, right? And so when I moved to Atlanta, like, it's one of the first things I wanted to do was like find an artist and see if I can, make this comic. That's actually how me and Marcus met. I don't know if y'all can see that. We reprinted. This is very old. Marcus is like, don't show it because my art's not great. And I'm like, shut up, Marcus. But we put that book together. Like, we printed it like at Kinko's. We stapled it. We formatted. We did everything by ourselves. And we were selling them out of the trunk and out of like one comic shop. And it's like, we didn't know anything about the publishing. Like, I listened to TJ and I'm like jealous because he got to come out of college and like learn the actual business of making comics. Whereas us, we didn't know anything about the business. But, we learned, like, I self-published a couple of children's books. And so when we got to Tuskegee Airs, it was never a thing about pitching or trying to find somebody to, publish it. We were like, we're just going to do it ourselves. Because of like what David mentioned, I don't want anybody like trying to alter the narrative, the story that we want to tell. Like, we've pitched for TV and we've had people like ask us, do we mind making one of the characters white? We're like, yeah, we kind of do mind that. So it's the same thing, and TJ made that really good point, is that regardless of what happens, we're the owners of these properties and we get to direct them the way we want. We don't have to jump into any deals we don't want to jump into. We can continue to stack and just make it more valuable. And then one day, if we decide to sell or to partner, we can command more money. So it's all encompassing. Like, there's so many good parts about it. There's some tough parts too, but I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, no, that really resonates. Like hearing from all of you about, especially just like seeing other people do it and like seeing other, particularly Black creators do it, and feeling like you can give yourself the permission to see like, oh, this is something that's possible and allows, like you said, to maintain the creative control over your work. I definitely resonate with that. So you all kind of like got into this a little bit, but maybe can you each also talk about like from the beginning of like finding collaborators to like sending your work off to print? Can you talk about how you went about like gathering the resources needed to create your work and like what that process looked like for you to actually create a comic?
I think it was you using your own money. You using your own
We're
money.
gonna talk about the money portion too. Yeah.
Paying people. If you didn't have the money all up front, paying them like a little bit of your paycheck once a week, or depending on the job, once every 2 weeks. Yeah, I really think it was. At least with Harriet, I found the artist Cortland Ellis who did the first issue. I found him on Facebook and really liked his work and thought he would be a good fit for it. Um, and again, I didn't know anything about comic books or publishing when I first started. And he had just did the cover, and the cover cost like a hundred something dollars, and it was great, and I really liked it. And I said, hey man, like how many? Let's do the first issue. It's 30 pages, and he's like, all right, man, here's my page rate, and I had no idea what a page rate was. I was like, oh, I just thought I just paid this one thing. You draw the whole thing. And he's like, nah, brother. And I was like, that's a car. That's a car, brother. So and I think this has been the saving grace, and I think all of us can attest to this, that like Kickstarter was a game changer for the industry, and for us as independent publishers, because again, that's the first thing. It's like money and resources, and also just like the network. Like I'm like, oh, I don't know who's gonna print and put my stuff together. And then ended up meeting Jason Reeves, who's the founder of 133 Art. Everyone, please print your books with him. He was responsible for that first initial print run of Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer. And then I moved on to Color Vision for the graphic novel.
Repeat the question one more time. Sorry, it's a little early here. My brain waking up.
No problem. Yeah. If you could talk a bit about like what was the process for you, like how you gathered resources to create your work, what resources were the most helpful for you? Like what does putting a comic together really look like?
Yeah, like I'm an art school student, so like I understood that making a comic book, 32 pages of illustrations was a tall task. I'd never done anything of that magnitude before. And even my like, yeah, I was a senior in college, and like that my BFA show, Bachelor of Fine Arts, we'd kind of do an exhibition, kind of give people an idea of what our intention is, to what we're going to do after we leave school. And like I had wanted to do a comic, so I did like a handful of pages, and it was the most work I'd ever did. trying to understand the mechanics of how to execute, because you have the knowledge, but then applying the knowledge is the most difficult part. So in practice it's like, oh man, how do I do this? So I'm working it out. I'm seeing that I still don't know enough, so I immediately went to trying to find a mentor. And I think I try to tell anybody now who wants to get into comics, try to find a mentor, because there's so many great people who know the business very, very well. David mentioned, Jason Reeves, but there's lots of guys like Marcus and Greg, are pillars in the community of Black comics. And David's is a genius when it comes to business and writing. Like these are people who I admire and I look up to, because they literally have different facets of the discipline that I'm trying to learn. So I think there's always this idea of being a student, being, somebody who's hungry to understand, but also, save your damn money. If you want to buy that pair of kicks, the new fresh J's that are out, which I always do, but I can't because I have to pay this artist. I mean, you just like the discipline, and my very first comic, Okemos number 0, I was writing and drawing it. And my mentor at the time was Rashida Lewis, who had a book called Sandstorm. She was one of the very, very few Black women who were drawing and writing her own comic at the time. And she was like, the thing that you want to do is going to cost you in the thousands. So you better save your paycheck. You better save your tax money, whatever thing you can do to put money aside so you can have the money to print this thing and to hire the right people, like for lettering and for printing and all this stuff. You need that. So like I had saved up, I think like 8 bands, just like in the bank over a couple of years time. And I'm like, okay, I know that the writing's not going to cost me anything because I'm going to do the writing. And I'm going to draw it, but then I got to find somebody to color because I don't know how to color. And then I got to find somebody to letter it because I don't know how to letter. Oh, I had to find an inker at the time too, because I was drawing traditionally on pencil and paper. And again, I hadn't understood the advent of digital drawing wasn't really available to me. I was too broke to afford Photoshop or tablets or any of that. So I was like, okay, penciling, got to find an inker, a colorist, a letterer. Then I got to find somebody to print a book. And all of that just took my $8,000 down to 0 when it was all said and done, when I printed everything. So saving your money, not going on vacation, and taking the opportunity to really, really be serious is the key.
Yeah. Great stuff they said. I would just add, like, so for us, like I started doing the children's books, and it was really cool because the publisher, well, the printer, because they're called a publisher, but all they did was really print my books. They would have these seminars like on Saturdays, which was, time where I wanted to do hood rat things. But it's like we would go to these seminars and they would like teach us a lot about like the publishing business. We recognized with Starving Artist, the first book that we wrote, we realized we can make something that's cool that people will buy, even though they don't know us, So we were like, okay, we know how to make stuff well, but we got to understand this business stuff. So I was doing that. Marcus worked on a book called Hero Cats. And so he was going, on to conventions with the publisher, like all of that. And I always say, whenever you sit us in a room, it's like we're going to just be like reverse engineering everything, like breaking stuff down. And I look at every opportunity as a chance to learn something. So by the time, we did Tuskegee Airs, and we got way more money with that Kickstarter than we expected to. But we already knew who we were going with. We already knew there was a printer in what was it called? Transcontinental, something like that, in Canada. And they would take you as long as you had money. So that dispelled, because, you're thinking, oh, these guys print for like these major publishers. They're not going to deal with little old me, but they will deal with little old you if you have money, because they're printers. That's what they do. So there we learned, buy, order in bulk. You can get your cost per print down very low to where you actually can make real money, like when you sell these books. So, it was just a lot of that. And just like being a sponge, like if I get a chance to sit in a room with David Walker, I'm just gonna shut up and let him talk because he's a wealth of knowledge. There's people that are like that. Sanford Green, that don't mind sharing. Rodney Barnes, they don't mind sharing. If you're sitting with them, they don't mind telling you, the tricks, whatever. So it's, that was a big part of it, but it's, like gathering the resources. We used to be on like a lot of artists that I ended up finding, we found like on Instagram, like our Twitter back in the day. And then being in the Milestone Initiative, like I've literally, there's a ton of, like there was 12 artists, 12 writers, and I've probably hired at least 5 of the artists so far in some capacity. Cause it's like when you meet people, they're talented and they actually hit deadlines and stuff, then you kind of stick with them. So, but there's been processes. We had an artist just ghost us after like 17 pages of the book, with a very distinct style to where you can't have somebody come in and finish. So you just got to scrap it. So, you learn stuff on the way, but I think, and TJ alluded to it, like just being willing to learn and, because sometimes there'll be resources that are available to you. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah, that's all like really insightful. And I think like all of you touched on this. That goes into my next question. We know obviously that making comics comes with costs. So I think each of you talked about your own experiences with crowdfunding. How can you maybe share if there's any additional advice you would give for aspiring creators who are trying to figure out the best ways to crowdfund and also to kind of like promote their work in getting support?
Um, I I say yes, being online as much as possible is really important. Having different types of social media is important, but also having physical FaceTime and going to the source. Like I think during like the very first Kickstarter, and I've done this for every Kickstarter, I always try to pop up at a comic book shop, and either talk to the owner or even now that they're doing everyone's streaming now, try and do like a stream collaboration with a comic book shop or even put up cards and all that stuff, or even like down to the point of like, hey yo, listen to my mixtape, you know. When it comes to New York, like in New York City, just like handing out flyers of my Kickstarter. So yes, like there are some people who make a lot of money and they never leave their home. But it's really important that people get to know not just your work, that they get to know you as a person, because you're not just again, the gentleman on this call, on this recording, you know, they are not only extremely talented as, you know, creative people, but they're also really accessible, easy to talk to. Like I can hang out and talk with them, you know, all day, you know, except for like Greg, who's a racist. Um, but like, um, but no, like, so just making yourself available, you know, making and not being someone who's afraid of community. That's how I think you'll make money, but you'll resonate with people and they won't forget you.
Yeah, I say it's a lot harder today. Uh, like we were able to do like crazy, I got semi crazy numbers, and it was all organic. Like we didn't pay for ads, we didn't pay for people to pump and promote. We created something, people saw it, they were excited about it, and they pledged and they shared and they championed us. It's a lot different now, because the algorithms, like I think anybody will tell you when you're in an actual Kickstarter campaign, the algorithms will like just be beating you over your head. It's like David could post something about his Kickstarter, and I'll be like, "Oh, this is cool. Let me share it." And then I share it, and I get like 4 views. The algorithms are whipping you. So to combat that, you definitely want to have a following, number one. And the face to face, like David said, you got to be able to get into people's faces. And one of the things that I wish that I would have focused on a lot earlier are mailing lists. Because even, like now you can DM people, but there's so many people DMing. Like I have a separate box for DMs besides like my people, because there's so much junk that's coming in your DMs. And even mailing lists now, like I'll send out a newsletter and it'll be like 30% open. So you can't guarantee, but you have to really work your butt off to be seen, get some people anticipating the project that you're launching. And as stated before, you also at this point you need to be willing to invest your own money to get the to try to get the project done or get it mostly done. Because I kind of switched. I basically use Kickstarters more as like a pre-order campaign than actually trying to use the money to get the book done, because you just never know.
Yeah, that's all facts. Both these gentlemen, bullseye when it comes to just getting the money to do the thing. Yeah, by nature I'm a social introvert, so I don't be doing things online, like talking to people is actually kind of very uncomfortable for me. So I was actually kind of not really feeling Kickstarter or Indiegogo, like just what it looked like. That and I didn't know anything about it either. So the first 5 years I was running my business, I just was making the book by myself on my own dime, going to cons. Again, it was no limit, masterpiece style, out the trunk. Every place I could go, stores, book signings, whatever it was, that was what I did for 5 years. Then the pandemic hits, and I had no choice but to do a Kickstarter. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I got to learn this now. And now it is a part of my business structure. But it was that 5 years of grinding in person and kind of coming out of my shell with people one on one that allowed me to have the confidence to be able to do a Kickstarter. And then I had the following, which made it very successful on my very first time ever doing one. So, yeah, I would just say, even if you're gonna, putting social media numbers first is not necessarily the way to, garner actual sales. I think a lot of people, because now you can fake social media numbers, you can, basically, oh, hey, I've got 50, 40, 50K, blah, blah. But like, I got friends that got 200, 300K, and they can't sell anything. Because again, like sometimes markets like IG are not places to sell stuff. The one-on-one relationships are. So I think, you could have 200 followers and make $50,000, or no followers at all, depending on the project and your level of community that you have. And I think, again, just putting community first is always the most important thing. And then everything kind of figures itself out. But to Greg's point, they treating your Kickstarter like a pre-order is a much better business model. It's safer, than, oh, hey, I have an idea and I want y'all to help me do the thing. Because I mean, I know like these gentlemen, I've supported hundreds of campaigns, and half of them shits I haven't gotten my rewards for. Because again, like they had a cool idea, I invested in it, and then a million things happen. Oh, the artist dips out, or oh, I got sick, or like there's a million different reasons why people can't fulfill their campaign. So the your reputation is the most important thing as a publisher, as a creator, as a writer, artist, whatever it may be. So first impressions, if you can't fulfill your Kickstarter the first time, it's going to be really, really difficult for them to want to give you money the second time around. And you just know you don't want that type of smoke. You want them to be like, oh, hey, we know that TJ, Greg, David, and whoever else, like Newton's got a new Kickstarter coming up. Shout out to Newton, Little Wild, Crescent City Monsters. Um, they put the work in behind the scenes to make the book. They put their money where their mouth is. So when we buy it, we know that we're going to get the book within an X amount of time. And that speaks volumes to the consumer because they don't want to wait. I mean, shit, I don't want to wait either. If I buy something online, I want it next day. I want that Amazon energy. I know I can't get that with every purchase, but I want it to be as close as possible to be like, I get that shit really, really quickly.
And I've combat that with just being like, I'll get it when I get it. I'm at that point with Kickstarter because I know how hard all of this stuff is. So I literally, like TJ said, man, I'll be looking back like, I never got that book. But I don't even trip. Because I look at it like, first of all, I'm throwing money into people that I want to see do well. The funny thing about Kickstarter is that in the beginning, that's what it was. It was supposed to be like, people are helping you bring an idea to life, whether it's an invention, a book, whatever. But now it's very rigid. And part of it is because, like what TJ said, a lot of people don't, actually fulfill. So it's I kind of just, I guess, tailor my expectations and be like, yeah, when I get it, I'll get it. I support a lot of Kickstarters as well. So it's like, I just be like, here, $25, $30.
Yeah, I feel that. And I think something else I'm like thinking about as you're all been talking about this is really just like making those connections with people through how you're distributing your work as well. So like whether you're doing this as an individual or through your own like indie publications, if you all could talk like more about, you've touched on this a bit, but the process of actually distributing your work. Like me personally, I think I've run into all of you at tabling at conventions and have bought your stuff. So if you could talk about like what has been like most successful, whether it's like tabling or building connections with comic shops or, what have you.
Yeah, I think doing, and again, the guys can attest to this, you know, especially like, Greg and TJ, who, I'm not in their tax bracket, unfortunately, since they've risen to, like have you seen Greg's house and TJ's car? Like I'm nowhere, like I'm outside. Literally, I'm outside.
This man is a liar.
No, like I think, and again, it goes back to being in person. Like I think conventions are one of the better ways. At least, like I think it's the most fun because you get FaceTime with people. And yes, money fast and transactions and all that stuff, but seeing people like light up when they flip through your book and this thing that you've seen and read like 1,000 times to make sure it's right, and then they buy your thing. But yeah, when it comes to comic book shops, currently, I have a distribution partner with Massive and Lunar and Simon Schuster. But even with that, it's still the same thing. Like calling comic book shops, and cold calling them, and even like before this distribution deal even happened, like, and I think that's a testament to just working in customer service and just changing up like the script on them. And just saying like, hi, like I'm David. I wrote this thing. It's called Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer. And, thankfully either they'll get hooked on the title, or if they're like a raging racist like Greg, they'll just hang up on me. I'm kidding. Greg's not a racist, everybody. I'm joking. Relax. Damn. Greg's like, I'm not a racist in public. But no, like, so tons of cold calling people. tons of
Real.
yeah, just checking in with people and saying like hi, or even trying to make deals with them. Like I used to send people posters that I think Nicholas Draper Ivy. This is Nicholas Draper Ivy is a freaking superstar right now, but he had done this cover for one of the issues that we did as a print, and just making deals like, hey, like if you buy this amount of comic books, I'll send you posters and all that stuff, right? So I really think just having physical FaceTime with people through conventions, having FaceTime, not even FaceTime, just calling as many comic book stores as possible is the move.
Yeah. No, that's real. I mean, yeah, there's a list of well, actually David floated me that list, and then I've been adding to it over the last year of just
I
all the
made it.
different.
I made that list.
David made this very robust list of stores, and I've been since adding to that list of all people I've been calling and been meeting because we have a similar type of distribution deal with Massive, and that helps us get a lot of our books into stores. But yeah, I mean, I call them personally, and again, it's hundreds of shops all across the country, even sometimes abroad, saying, "Hey, this is the book that I got. I really want you guys to check it out." That helps. But a lot of times that, having the distribution partnership helps because again, they get so many other people calling with indie books. So having some type of achievement on that, does really help out a lot from what I've seen thus far. But cons, I think for me are still my favorite because I get to meet people in person and sign their book, and we get to have a vibe and experience, and that does build that connective tissue that allows us to keep doing the same thing. And I think over probably for all of us, most of the people that we see at cons are like repeat customers that want to come back and get that next issue. They want to see what you got coming up because again, they're hungry for content. And it's just so dope to see this swelling of interest in the work that we're making. And even people who are fed up with the big two are like, hey, we're here for the independent stuff because you guys are telling stories the right way, the holistic way, the way to um really to their hearts as consumers, is telling great stories without an agenda, just to just tell great stories and have a good time. So all of that really does help out a lot.
Yeah, and like with distribution, so online sales are amazing. It's probably the least work you have to do. You just package the book, take it to the post office or whatever. Um, and the margins are great there. The margins are great at comic conventions, but you do have the overhead because you're paying for, a lot of times you might be paying to travel, you might have to pay for a table, whatever. So it's like you got to consider all those things. And then books, like bookstores, the margin is like the lowest because, you're going to have, comic shops usually want to do, like buy wholesale at cost or whatever. And then, like some bookstores, you might get somebody that wants to do like 64 or 60/40 on consignment, that kind of stuff. But there's still a lot of value to having your books in stores and selling. So since we distribute everything ourselves, as far as the stuff that, we self-publish, um, I kind of deal with the comic shops that reach out to us. So like we'll have somebody like, hey, I got these customers, they keep asking about this Tuskegee Airs. Do you guys have a whatchamacallit? And I say, yeah, I got a whatchamacallit. We, work it out, send the books out. That's cool. But then you have the shops like Amalgam before they closed in Philadelphia. They had sold like, I think that last count, it was close to like 1,300, Tuskegee Airs. Challenges, we stopped counting. Challenges, games and comics in Atlanta, we stopped counting. It's got to be like I'm always, having to go in there and give them more books. So you find those stores that kind of champion your project, that really want to move your books, and they have the market for it. So I kind of focus on that more so than the overall distribution. Because I'll be honest, we don't put books out fast enough to, to get with like a major distributor. So, and you got the whole diamond thing. A lot of people got jerked from that. So I'm also a little bit cautious. But with books that I like, The Search for Sadaka recently got picked up by Rosarium Publishing. So, now there is a distributor for that book, and, we're going to see how it goes. It releases in the next week or so.
Awesome. Cool.
Shout out to Bill Campbell. What up, Bill?
Yeah, Bill, man.
Yeah, that I feel like I'm absorbing so much information. So we're gonna wrap up shortly, but before we do, I did want to just ask if you could all like briefly share any piece of final advice that you'd want to share to aspiring creators who are interested in self-publishing.
Greg, you go first, Greg.
I got the most gray in my beard. Like, honestly, be sure that it's something you want to do is my first thing. TJ made a really good point, and we've seen that with people like, yo, I can do comics. I want to be a comic artist. And then 10 pages later, they're like, I hate this with every fiber of my being. It's a lot of work. And to be honest, it's less money. You'll make less money illustrating a comic for somebody than you would, doing like fine art or other things like when you sell a piece. So it's like, make sure it's something that you really want to do. And then once you decide that, then even if you want to just specialize in one area like writing or lettering or whatever, make sure you get as much of an understanding of the entire business than you can. I see online, I'm going to try not to go crazy, but online there's all these people that tell all these companies what they should be doing with their properties, and and it's like, y'all understand how much money this stuff costs? Like, it's always easy to say, oh, you should do this, you should do that, but when you actually have to bear that financial burden, a lot of stuff changes. And sometimes you could have all the money in the world, but you still got to invest the time. TJ dropped some jewels today, y'all. You still have to, you have to account for the time that it's going to take, because like we just did issue 5 of Tuskegee Airs. We did it online in like 2 months, and we went out every night, and Marcus was drawing, and we're like working out the stuff. So people can actually get to see how much time and effort goes into making these books, because it's always, it doesn't magically appear. So get an understanding of all of those things, because it's going to be time, it's going to be money, it's going to be heartbreak. And the last thing I'll say, and I learned this is some of the greatest advice I got from that printer, is they said the easiest part of the process is making the book. Once you have the book done, now you got to figure out how to sell it. Right? So it's like, you have to be thinking forward and trying to learn like all these different avenues at the same time. But if you love it, I can say, because I read these dudes' work, and I know myself that everybody you're talking to today loves making comics. They love it. And like, I don't know what David is talking. David is talking about money, because I'm about to go make me some ramen noodles and try to finish these 2 scripts that I was supposed to already have. It's the money. Like, if you're getting into comics to get rich, then go away, do something else. It doesn't mean you can't get rich, but just that can't be your main. If it's not for the love, then go do something else.
Thanks, Craig.
Sorry, that's a lot of advice.
No, it's helpful.
That's real though. I'm gonna try to keep it tight, since we got to get David. But yeah, the do it for the love. That's like one of my favorite things like the passion behind what you're doing has to be paramount. Because I mean, if you're in comics, you know, keeping it a buck, like comics are not something that are a sure thing. If you like sure things and you like safe bets, then this isn't the business for you. If you're here to try to, make a Netflix special, and this really isn't the business for you, you know what I'm saying? Because again, if you are doing that and you're alongside people who I've been in this since the beginning and who are really passionate about telling great stories, the audience, I'm sorry, the people who are supporting your Kickstarters, meeting you at cons, they're going to feel the difference in the energy. They're going to understand that there's just like what the intention is, and a lot of some of the newer folks are using AI as a shortcut, and people are again conventions are kicking those people out. Like they literally, I mean, Greg and I were at a convention in Dragon Con last year, and they kicked somebody out for AI, and they had the cops come. You know what I'm saying? So we talk about
It was like
reputation.
somebody died.
It was that serious. They had 3, 4 officers pull up, like, yo, what the heck? Like, there's a crime scene. You know what I'm saying? But the thing here is that if you're gonna do anything, just do something that you love, that you're actually passionate about. Because there's so many dope things that you can do. Like, why come into a business and try to exploit it? Come into the business that you really want to be in and enjoy it. You know what I'm saying? And do something that you love. And um, I think there's so many different things you can do in comics too. I mean, you could be an editorial, you could be a writer, you could be an artist, you could, be in printing. I mean, there's so many different facets of the business that are all very, very exciting. So if one thing doesn't, kind of strike your fancy, there are many other things that you could potentially get into. And even teaching, I had the pleasure of being a teacher at the Joe Kubert School, which is again one of the first comic book university, and I really derive a lot of you know I guess spiritual fulfillment from being a teacher and helping students and who are interested in making comics and who are there for the right reasons. They're paying for these classes to learn the business of comics. And again, like I could, if even if I wasn't making comics, I could just do teaching and still be fulfilled. So I think it's like what's fulfilling, passionate for you, and really what strikes a chord with you as a person. And I think that's a good place to start. David, where you go, you turn into a bubble.
I'm here. Um,
Okay.
a-
Okay.
Again, echo everything everyone has said. Make sure you love it. Make sure you love it, because there's going to be times where you're tired. There's going to be times you want to sleep in. There's going to be times you don't feel like writing. There's going to be, there's an alternate universe where I use that tax return and I go to Italy and I don't make Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer 2 and 3. Or, there's an alternate universe where, Killer Bee can come out some other time and I take this extra money and buy the same houses that TJ and Greg own. But but yeah, just make sure that you love it, because there's lots of amazing days of wins and lots of highs. But there are some lows. There are some lows. There's going to be a convention. There's going to be conventions where things are great. You make a lot of money. You make back the hotel. You make back double the travel, the table. There's going to be days where you're like, whew, thank God we made back the table. Thank God we just made the table back. So, yeah, I just say make sure you love it, because I think when you love it, you smile when you're tired or extremely inconvenienced. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you again for sharing all of this amazing insight. This was really fun and really informative. I know I learned a lot from this. I hope everyone watching also has too. And before we go, can you each also remind everyone of where they can find you and your work?
You can find me at D Crownson on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and at Kingwood_comics and KingwoodComics.com, where you can order my stuff directly. Support a brother.
Greg_Burnham7 at Instagram, on Instagram. Not it. And you can find Tuskegee Gears pretty much everywhere. TuskegeeGears.com is a good place to go if you want to pre-order issue 5. That'll be coming out. Well, by the time this comes out, it should be already, order. But yeah, those are the things so far. To search for Sadaka, go to Amazon and other places. And I got some other really cool stuff happening right now, but I'm not allowed to say anything.
This guy. Listen, when he drops some, I'm just like, damn it. Again, the heat. Let's go. I love it. But yeah, guys, everybody who's watching, buy everybody's books if you can, even if it's a digital copy. KingwoodComics.com, TuskegeeAirs.com. I love these books. I love these gentlemen. They're great dudes. And if you want to find me, please don't look for me personally. Look for my Instagram at Ray Comics, RAE Comics, or RAE Comics.com. You can get everything I make. I would love to see you guys. I'd love to talk with you. Hit me up that page up on the DMs. I do respond to it. If you got questions, if you're interested in collaborating on something, super excited to continue to serve you guys. Thank you so much.
Awesome. And again, my name is Bria Struthers, or Be the Orator on all social media. Thank you to these amazing panelists, Greg, TJ, David, for joining me. And thank you, everyone at home, for watching. And please stay tuned for more Ink and Panels programming coming up.
Zing.
It doesn't overwhelm the reader, it doesn't do too much, and it's something that with each installment of the series, you kind of see the world expand and expand and expand and expand.
I implemented some of the more traditional comic book script writing in with it to make it easier for the artist to understand.
My ideas are born out of either something that I am just either researching and then I've gotten like really stuck on it and I've gone down this rabbit hole.
Building that world that for people to be able to immerse themselves in, right?
You want to get into the field, and next thing I know, next time I see them, that same convention next year, they got a book that they want to show me.
And so I think the big thing about us was we were on the same page about how we wanted to do it and how we could do it effectively, and it just worked for us.
It's just crazy the feeling that you get when you make that connection. And my fellow comic book creators know, like when somebody comes to your table and tells you that they really like your story.
Ink&Panels.
Ink&Panels Volume 2.
Ink and Panels Volume 2.
It's called Ink and Panels Volume 2.